Last night at the White House, Trump said, "Get me McShay," and they said McDonald's, and then that's what happened. Is that true, Todd McShay?
That's exactly what happened.
Is that exactly what happened last night with Clemson in the house last night?
I think so. What a mess. What a mess.
What do you think, Clemson? Do you know Clemson's nutritionist? Todd, have you met the person who apparently is one job is to make sure the kids don't eat fast food? Have you heard about that?
I actually haven't. I've met Alabama's. I've been to the facility, but I've not met that person. But I cannot imagine that he or she was really thrilled with that.
Dabo's seen it, all those burgers out there. I'm sure he dove into one himself. All right, let's dive into the main story on the menu today, and that's Kyler Murray, Todd. Let's start with the evaluation of Murray as it currently stands, with him saying he's now eligible to be drafted in 2019 in the NFL, Todd.
There's a lot of layers to this, Rich. There really are. I mean, the first thing and the most obvious thing that everyone's going to point out is his size. And at the combine, we'll all be sitting there waiting to see is he 5'8.5"? Is he 5'9"? What is he? And then I think just as importantly, his weight and thickness. Like, can he hold up? Because you look at Russell Wilson, he's 5'10", 3/8 inches, but he's also 205. And I do think one thing that Kyler does a really good job of, like Russell does, is protect himself. And a lot of it was because he had $4.7 million on the line this year. I didn't realize that he had maybe some more. But at some point, you got to get concerned if he's only 180 pounds. Now, I'm a little bit more concerned about the baseball aspect of it, because I have a really good friend. One of my best friends from growing up he works in Major League Baseball in the offices in New York, and he's been texting me all week long about, all right, if he goes 15, what's the money? If he goes 33, what's the money? Clearly, and I didn't ask him, but clearly he's getting questions from the A's, and Major League Baseball wants him to be a Major League Baseball player because he could be one of the faces of that sport. So what happens if he's just leveraging football over baseball, or if he really legitimately is going to try to play football for 1 or 2 years, but it fails, and then you lose out and he goes back to baseball. So those are the two things. Now, on the positive side, he's electrifying, obviously. He's, to me, as explosive a quarterback and athletic a quarterback as we've seen since Michael Vick. He also is very accurate. He has touch. He goes through his progression reads quickly. He does so many of the little things well that you wouldn't think a quarterback with only 14 college starts does. So I think he can be a legitimately good starter in the NFL, a difference maker, a playmaker, and I would draft him in the first round if I was guaranteed that he would make football the number one priority and give me at least 3 years to try to work it out.
Todd McShay here on the Rich Eisen Show. Todd, I said at the opening of this show, I said upon hearing he might actually declare, and then after he declared, and I'll repeat it again here, you know exactly what you just said. You know talent evaluators in the NFL, and you know how much they can fall in love with talent. All it takes is one, is the famous phrase, obviously, to just draft anybody that has some question marks about physical attributes or anything like that. But it's the desire to play football that everybody's got to be lockstep on, and that everybody who evaluates talent has room for 3 Fs: faith, family, and football. There's no room for A's, Todd. There's no room for Red Sox. There's no room for Yankees. There's no room for any of that. Don't you think he has to declare one way or another at some point? And if so, when is that point, do you believe?
I think he does. If he wants to maximize what he can make. I mean, to answer your question, I think it has to be before the combine. I really do. Because if you're going to go through all of that, because then he's got to either show up to A's training camp or he's got to be at the combine and perform. So I look at it this way. You can probably go play football for 2 or 3 years and then go back to baseball. I don't think you can go play baseball and then come back to football at the quarterback position. And I definitely don't think you can do both. It's not like Bo Jackson. It's not like Dion, any of the other dual sport players. If you're playing a position, a wide receiver, cornerback, running back, that's fine, but not quarterback. You cannot do both, in my opinion. So he has to declare, and he's going to have to convince teams in a very short period of time that he's doing this really to completely commit to football for multiple years and to give it a full shot. I don't know. I sat in the room with Lincoln Riley, and we all assumed, it was Brian Greasy and I, Steve Levy, we were sitting in the room, and everyone assumed I think it was late October before the Texas Tech game, that he was a one and done. Every scout I talked to that has that area said, we're not even really evaluating him because he's either going to come back to school or he's going to go play Major League Baseball next year. And so I asked him, I said, where are you in the process? Is there any indication if he's going to come back to school? Has any chance of playing in the NFL? Because I think, Lincoln, that he could play at a high level. And he said, I agree. He said, I think he's a first-round pick. We promised each other we wouldn't talk about it till the end of the year. And that was the first time I had gotten any indication that he was thinking about it. But now that he's come out and said that he's declaring for the NFL draft, you also know scouts, in addition to wanting full commitment, they're a skeptical bunch, and understandably. And they're going to dig and dig and dig to try to figure out, is he legitimately trying to do this, or is this a leverage play? Is he trying to make more money? Because he could, off of his initial contract, guaranteed money, make $10 to $15 million more than that $4.7 million that he already has guaranteed by the A's being a first-round pick.
Todd McShay here on the Rich Eisen Show. Before the combine, huh? Because I'm thinking maybe the A's, as are enlightened enough to basically say, go see if there are other fish in the sea, go sow your NFL wild oats, and then come home and let him go to the combine and let him go there. And obviously, being somebody who's sitting in that booth for 4 straight days on live television on the NFL Network, I sure hope that happens. I hope that'd be great if Murray shows up there. And if he can handle all the questions, because that's when it would come, forget about spinning it on the field and going through the drills. I'm sure he'll be dynamite at that, and he'll blow away the 40-yard dash line too. It's the meeting, it's the medical, it's the measurements and all that, but it's the meetings at night when the coaches and evaluators are going to look him in the eye and say, well, what gives with the A's? Do you want to do this or not? And he can sit there and go up, down, left, and right and talk about how much he loves it. But at some point, he's got to declare. And if you think it's before the combine, then he's got to do that pretty darn fast, Todd.
Yeah, no, you're right. And if he gets to the combine, that's going to be the interesting part because, as you well know, the psychologists that are in the room, it's not just the scouts and offensive coordinator, head coach, general manager in some situations. I'm sure even an owner in this situation. But most teams have a psychologist sitting in the room. And I think it would be fascinating, and I don't know that we'll get the answer for years, but it would be fascinating to listen to a psychologist talk about how he answered the questions and, how he presented himself, and if they legitimately bought the story. I mean, you can't put a polygraph on him, but other than that, you're trying to do everything you can to try to figure out if he legitimately wants to do this, because there is a play for leverage. And we've already heard there's reports out there about the A's talking to Major League Baseball, trying to get exemptions to try to figure out ways to pay him more to make sure that he comes and plays for them in Major League Baseball. And so to me, this is one of the most fascinating pre-draft stories that I've been a part of in 20 years of covering the draft.
I agree with you, Todd. So wouldn't that be great if one of the teams hires Robert De Niro and they have a Meet the Parents scene where he strolls into the meeting room
down in the basement somewhere,
sit down, talk about a circle of trust, right? I know, but we laugh, but NFL teams would want to do that if they were allowed.
It's the last thing they're laughing about.
Todd McShay here on the Rich Eisen Show. Who's number one right now? Your best guess? Is it Bosa? Could it possibly be Haskins? How do you see this playing out, shuffling now that we know who's in the mix? Todd?
I think Bosa and Quinnen Williams, the defensive tackle from Alabama, are the two best football players in this draft. I also think the first 5 teams, you could look at their quarterback situation, and there's not a desperate need necessarily. Who knows, good friend John Gruden has a little bit of quarterback ADD, so you never know where that's going to go. But I think if you look at the history, and most importantly the recent history, Cleveland couldn't trade up because they had the first pick, but just about every other team the last few years has traded up to go get quarterbacks. So it won't shock me if it's the Giants moving up from 6, Jacksonville from 7, maybe even Denver from 10. If there's some movement to go up to get a quarterback, Haskins could wind up going a lot earlier than maybe people expected, but I legitimately do think he's a top-shelf first-round quarterback that deserves to be drafted in the top 10. The more I study of him, the more I really appreciate his game. I'd love to see more than 14 starts, but, Trubisky had 13 starts. We scrutinized that. He hasn't been great, but he's been good enough, and I think we'll go through the whole process with Haskins, and I really do think when we get to the draft, there will be a lot of people that are comfortable with Haskins as a top 10 pick. And who knows, with Kyler, if teams are convinced, it wouldn't shock me if he was in the top 10, 15 picks overall as well.
No kidding. Isn't it amazing? I mean, this wouldn't even been considered 5 years ago, prior to the RPOs and the college offense being more.
The game's changed, man. It really has. And the more coaches I talk to, and the more you study the tape, the more you have to just kind of let go of the old. You really do. It doesn't have to be 6'5", in the pocket, statue, get the ball out, all those things. It can be undersized, moving around, creating your own passing lanes. I mean, Drew Brees is 6 foot. Russell Wilson's 5'10" 3/8 inches. Baker Mayfield. I mean, all of these guys that are having success, and I understand that there's still, Phillip Rivers and Tom Brady and so on and so forth, but the game is changing to more of a spread tempo game where undersized quarterbacks can succeed in the league. And I think you're ignorant if you don't start realizing that. And it probably took me a year or two too long to start realizing it.
And Todd McShay, then there's Tua coming down the pike, and then Trevor Lawrence. I mean, holy crap, him being 6'6" or 6'5" or whatever he might be. And we asked this question on our poll question after the national championship game. We asked my colleague and your counterpart and Daniel Jeremiah. I'd love to ask you the question. We said if you could take stock over the next 10 years in somebody, and we gave you Trevor Lawrence, we gave you Tua, or anybody drafted in the 2018 draft class that's a quarterback, who would you choose? What would you take?
It would be Trevor. And to be totally honest with you, it would have been, I don't want to say 50-50. I would have leaned Trevor before the game, but head-to-head watching that, there was a clear difference.
Why?
And to step up in that stage and to be nervous early, that was the other thing that really impressed me. His first 3 throws scared me because he was forcing it, he was uncomfortable, but to settle down in that stage against, admittedly, not the best Alabama defense, but a defense that throws so many different looks at you and has so much talent, even though it's not the best. It was really impressive to me, and I think that was one of the moments that you watch. It was almost like watching Andrew Luck. When you're so certain that if things work out health-wise, he's just going to be a great pro. And time will tell. But I also knowing about him and sitting down with Dabo and sitting down with their offensive coaches about how mature he is for his age and how he's been developed the right way. He's a special dude, and he's different. And I think it'll be a major surprise if he's not a very good starter in the NFL when he gets his shot.
DJ said he's still sticking with Sam Darnold, Todd. He wouldn't come off of that.
I love Sam, too.
Okay.
I love Sam, too. I mean,
yeah.
Head-to-head Sam, Trevor right now. All right, I'll take Trevor. But I wouldn't. I mean, I'm a huge Sam guy. So
maybe that's what Gase was thinking about looking around the thing. He's thinking about the same thing. Maybe that's what he was thinking about looking around the press conference room.
Should I try to go get Trevor?
Hey, look, that's what everybody is thinking right now. We're hearing some teams are already thinking about Tua a year out right now. Todd, that's no joke.
The Gates thing was wild. That was interesting.
All right, you want to ask Todd the poll question before you let him go?
All right, Todd, what's the best football movie? Varsity Blues, Remember the Titans, Any Given Sunday, Rudy, Friday Night Lights, or Brian's Song?
Ugh. I love the show Friday Night Lights.
Yep.
I think Remember the Titans is the one that would make me tear up and get really emotional. So that would probably be my favorite. Varsity Blues, though, Rich, I'm disappointed in you. That's
I've never seen it.
Vanderbeek, who's
I know.
You don't want my life, right?
Yes.
Todd, I'm always honest with you and my listeners and viewers every single day. I shoot you straight. I've never seen Varsity Blues. So what's your one sports movie that you're ashamed to admit that you haven't seen?
Oh, that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think
you've seen them all. You've seen them all?
I haven't seen them all, but I can't think of one that's significant that I haven't seen.
Jeez, McShay's already he's more up on it. Well, yeah, look, Todd, you
watch Varsity Blues. How old are your kids? They're older.
No, they're 10, 7, and 5. Todd,
yet.
Not yet. We're not ready for.
Oh, so the
5-year-old
probably shouldn't see the scene where they go all night. Yep, I got you.
Yeah.
Hot for teacher.
Good parenting, Todd. Thanks for that evaluation. I appreciate that. Take care. Thanks for the call.
All right, bud. Take care.
That's Todd McShay at McShay13.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.